Guten Tag, und willkommen zu mein Welt. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about my motivations for joining the Marine Corps as opposed to the other branches. Now, this is going to probably be at least um, broken up into two parts. The first part's going to be um, my experience with the recruiters, because the recruiters were one of the main reasons that got me into thinking about joining the Marine Corps. And then the second part is going to be some of my other reasons for joining. Um, Now, as I say this, I want to, in hindsight, I want to say that um, the way the recruiters conduct themselves is probably not the best indicator for which branch of service you should join. But for me, on a personal level, how the recruiters conducted themselves meant a lot to me. And I mean, it is their job to represent the Marine Corps or the Army or the Air Force. So I believe that it is a good indicator for me. I'm not saying that it should be a good indicator for everybody. But anyway, here's my story on my experiences uh, talking to the various recruiters. Okay, now, first off, as soon as I made the decision that, hey, I'm going to join the military for reals, like I was legitimately joining the military, the first people I contacted were the Air Force. Now, the reason why I called the Air Force is because I have an immediate family tradition in the Air Force. If you watch my last video, I talk about the picture on my grandfather's wall of the family that's been in the Air Force, and I wanted to be part of that family photo. So, needless to say, those were the first people I called. And when I called them, I had a specific MOS in mind. Well, actually, it's an Air Force specialty code or something like that, service code. Anyway, it's not called an MOS in the Air Force. But anyway, I was wanting to become a 9S XX, which is basically a specialized science technician, where I'd go out and take field surveys and stuff like that, which goes along with my degree in pretty much geochemistry. I'm a geochemist, and I was looking for jobs in geochemistry. Well, anyway, I called the recruiter, and I was like, okay, well, I want to join the Air Force. I want this MOS. What's the chances of me getting it? He was like, I only see that MOS pop up maybe once every year or two. Okay, so if I decided to join the Air Force and try to get contracted in there, then I'm probably not going to get it. So I decided not to do that. Now, you can be in DEP, I think, for a year waiting for your MOS training school to come up. Um, but I wasn't going to take that risk. But anyway, so while I'm talking to the Air Force recruiter, this is where it actually gets into the meat and potatoes of it. I was sitting there, I was wanting to talk to him, but the problem was that my car was broken down, so I figured I would go out and meet them. Well, we would arrange a place closer to my home so that I can talk to them, because I couldn't travel it was 15 miles, like it was 15 miles, and I didn't have my car. So I was trying to get him to meet me at the MEP station, because there's a MEP station in between my house and our recruiting office. And so I was like, okay, we were talking about it, and he was like, yeah, I could be at the MEP station. And I was like, okay, well, whenever you figure out a time that would be available, um, give me about a 2 hour notice time so I can walk there, because it's going to be like a 6 or 7 mile walk. And whenever I told him that, he got really surprised, and he was like, oh, wow, you're going to walk 6 miles? And immediately that sent red flags in my mind. I mean, here I am talking to a technical sergeant, which is like an E5 in the Air Force, I think, and he's getting surprised over me walking 6 miles. And to me, in my mind, it's like, what were you doing the whole time you're getting E5? That 6 miles seems like something praiseworthy. And for background, I had hiked 300 miles over the summer in Colorado, just last year. I hiked 3 miles in Colorado, and I hiked 50 miles from my college to my home one time for a reunion, like somewhere in between there and now. So, I mean, I have experience hiking long distances, and to me, like, that spoke volumes to me that he was surprised over 6 miles. But anyway, and then that wasn't the that wasn't the I would say the worst part. I mean, it was bad for me. That was a major red flag. But then I was telling him that I'm overweight. I mean, you could look at me. I'm overweight. Um, and I like half of the reason for that is I was bodybuilding, and then I went to powerlifting, and then from powerlifting I went into being a security guard. However, while I was a security guard, I was eating like I was powerlifting and bodybuilding, and so I blew up like a balloon. Okay, that tends to happen. It's a phenomenon, security guard phenomenon, where you just blow up. But anyway, so I told him that, hey, I'm probably not going to meet the weight requirement no matter what because I was bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I was like I could lose it, and like halfway through that he was like, oh wow, and then he asked, what is your thigh measurements? And I was like, what? One of my friends was like, I told one of my friends this, and it was like, he could have at least taken you out on a date first, like asking me my thigh measurements. I mean, it was 29 inches. Like I told him, I was like, 29 inches, because I had that on hand. But anyway, I just thought it was a weird question. So anyway, like after I was done calling him, he said he'd call me back. He never called me back. In hindsight, recruiters are very busy. They're going to lose track of stuff like that unless it's set in stone, like unless you set up an appointment. So, I mean, but at the time, I didn't have that going through my mind. I was just like, oh, he didn't call me back. But anyway, as soon as I got off the phone with him, I called the Army. And while I was doing this, I had this giant spreadsheet on my laptop where I had selected MOSs from each branch that I wanted. Well, each branch I had MOSs and specialty codes and everything for each branch. And when I called the Army, I was like, okay, well, this is the kind of stuff that I want to get into. And he just completely blew me off. Like, he was like, doesn't matter, don't look at your MOSs because you need to take the ASVAB first, which is true. But the thing is that I'm graduating college, it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to score pretty decently on the ASVAB. Well, that's not a guarantee, but in my field, it's pretty much a guarantee. It's like, I'm a chemist. If I can't do basic math, then how can I be a chemist, you know? But anyway, so he completely blew me off. I was sitting there talking to him about everything, and I gave him the same talk that I gave the Air Force recruiter. I was like, well, I was into bodybuilding and powerlifting, and I'm overweight, but I'm never going to make tape, so he asked me what my body fat percentage was, and I told him it's 34% body fat. I was 34% body fat at the time. And I was like, I've done this before. It'll take me about 3 months to get down to 24% body fat, which is what you need to join the Army. For the Marines, it's like 18% body fat. No, yes. I think it might be 20 to join the DEP program, and then you have to get it down to 18 or something like that. But they mainly do it by weight. But anyway, so I was like, it'll take me 3 months, but if I had a gym buddy, well, I said if I had my workout partner with me, it'd only take me 2. And then as soon as I said that, he was wanting to become gym bros with me. Well, that's what it sounded like. Like, he was like, oh, where do you lift? And blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm not looking for a gym buddy. I'm wanting to join the military. Like, I'm not here, like, the same kind of thing with the Air Force guy. He was treating me like he was wanting to be my friend. And, like, I was like, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to join the military. Like, which came into the thing whenever I started talking about the Marine recruiters. But anyway, so it was like, I said it 3 times now, I'm pretty freaking tired, so pardon me. But I was like, I'm not trying to be your bro or anything. I just want to join the military and stuff. And I was like, eventually I was like, can I get the ball rolling on this? Like, because the whole time it didn't sound like anything was going anywhere. He wasn't paying attention, nothing. And except for whenever he was talking about being a gym bro with me. I was like, can I get the ball rolling on this? And he was like, oh, yeah, we can get the rolling. And then, but then it pretty much died after that. hung up the phone pretty much. It was like, bye. Okay, so then I was kind of like disappointed because I got done talking to them and I was like, well, there's no point calling anybody else really, because obviously I need to lose weight. So I decided, okay, well, just lose weight and I'll call each of the branches back once I'm in a respectable weight range for them. So then, like being a little bit heartbroken over it, I went to school the next day, and it just so happened that there was a career fair going on at my college, and so I attended the career fair, and I go in there and I scan from left to right, and all of a sudden I see the most beautiful uniform I have ever seen in my life, and it was like what caught my eye was the red sergeant tag. The red sergeant patch that my recruiter, who's working with me now, was wearing, and I was like, "That is a beautiful uniform." Like it immediately caught my eye, and I went up and talked to him. And of course, I went up there. I was like, the first thing that came out of my mouth was like, "What's the chances of me getting in the 5711?" Which 5711 is CBRN unit, chemical defense. Chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense. But for me, shorthand chemical defense specialist. Um, so I was like, "What's the chances of getting into that?" And he was like, uh, "I don't know. Well, you need to take your ASVAB and everything, but I imagine you'll score high. What was your SAT scores and ACT scores?" And I told him, "Well, I did this, that, and the other." And he was like, I could see that he took it in, but he wasn't processing the numbers. Like he was just doing it. And he's like, "Okay, well, if you have high enough, if you get high enough on the ASVAB score and you're graduating college, you might as well just be going in as an officer, not talking to us." Like that was the first thing, pretty much the first thing he said. He was like, "Your best bet is probably to go with the officer route." And like lo and behold, like I went back and looked at my ACT scores, and like out of high school, I qualified to be an officer. Like the ACT scores that I took, like I got like a 28. It's not going to matter much to people across the U.S. They don't know what the ACT is because it's mainly kind of, I guess, a West Virginia thing. But anyway, I scored a 28 on math out of 32, I think, without a calculator. Um, like I just walked in one day and I was like, "Oh shoot, I thought y'all provided calculators," and I did it. But anyway, so like based on those scores alone, I qualified for being a Marine officer, which I'm not going to be a Marine officer, just saying. But anyway, but for me it was like he was telling me like this is probably not what you want to do. Like he was just being real with me, and I appreciated that. And so I ended up talking to an Army officer after that. He didn't really know what he was talking about or anything. And then I came back to the Marine Corps, and I was like, "Okay, well, what's travel like?" Like I came back to him because I had more questions. Like they left an impression, and I was like, "That's pretty cool," because they were giving me straight up answers, and I was like appreciating that because normally you hear about recruiters lying, trying to get you in, and everything. They're being pretty straight up with me. And so he's like, "Okay, well, basically we have East Coast, West Coast, and overseas. And if you request overseas, chances are you're going to go overseas." And he's like, "You'll probably be stationed in Okinawa, Japan." And I was like, "Okay. I mean, I want to be stationed in Germany, but hey, I'm not going to fuss too much." So anyway, so I went home and I decided to start looking into the Marine Corps. And I immediately, my spreadsheet, it went from just being a generic spreadsheet to this giant spreadsheet of what I can do, because I looked up and it was like, okay, well, you can't, well, a little bit more. Like the next day, I went straight to the recruiting office, like to the Marine recruiting office. I dropped in, like, my recruiter wasn't there because he was swearing in somebody else, but I just dropped in. And like I was seeing this one recruiter going over something with another older gentleman who was like he wasn't a high school student. He was, I think he was like 24 or something. But anyway, he was talking to him, and like he I bet it's best for me not to talk about the exchange, but the person who was being recruited wasn't the smartest person. And the recruiter kind of acknowledged that and was like, okay. He was like, you're not really listening to me. Because he was saying, okay, well, these are the benefits for joining the Marine Corps, like for future for future opportunities, these are the benefits the Marine Corps can give you. And he started giving off lists like college credits. He had 90 college credits and stuff. And he asked the person, okay, what are the benefits? Like, and he expected him just to regurgitate what he just said. And he was like, I don't know. And he's like, so basically you're telling me that you weren't listening to me at all. And I was like, that's pretty legit. Like, he was testing the person he was interviewing, and the guy wasn't listening to him, and he called him out on it. Like, there was no punches held back. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And so we went in there, and finally it was my turn to talk to this guy. It wasn't my recruiter. It was just somebody standing in. And he took an inventory of what I liked, like my medical history and everything. And he was like, okay, you need to get this, this, and this done before MEPS. And then he was like, okay, well, we're going to go over here and get your height and weight. And he accidentally said it wrong. He said I needed to be 244, I needed to be 230 before I can join DEP. But anyways, then we get back, and he was like, okay, well, you can come in this Saturday to talk to your recruiting sergeant. And he was like, and then he's going to go over, test like your character and your commitment. And once he said test your commitment, like kind of a halfway red flag came, like not a red flag, a yellow flag came up. And I was like, I told him, I was like, in regards to commitment, I'm also qualifying to be a firefighter, like a hazmat fighter. And he was like, based off of your score sheet here, well, not your score sheet, but your screening thing, like, you're good to go. All you need to do is lose the weight. And he was like, there's no reason for you to look into the fire department. And I was like, oh, okay. So, I mean, that was pretty cool. But anyway, like, that night, I started panicking. Like, I was like, oh crap, is this for real? Am I actually doing this? Like, this could be the worst decision of my life. Like, I was sitting there, things going through my mind. It was like trying to talk myself out of doing it. And it was just interesting because I was like so excited about it like before, and then actually whenever the ball started actually rolling, there was like a sense of panic on my mind. It was like, I'm sacrificing years of my life. I could die, and like it's gonna be rough as all get out. Like going through boot, I'm probably gonna feel like I'm gonna die. I kind of felt that way first IST test that I took. But anyway, so I start getting nervous, but then I pull myself together, and the next day I go back, and well, I guess it was the weekend, and then I had my IST story. You can see my IST story. But anyway, like while we're preparing for it, like there's two major things that told me that I was in the right place. And the first one was while we were preparing to go to a rifle range for a veteran to show us the firearms and stuff like that. Like we were in PT gear, like in shorts and everything. I showed up for PT, and the recruiter was like, okay, well, we're going to the rifle range, put on some clothes. And I was like, and whenever he said that, I went up to the recruiter and I was like, okay, I don't have a change of clothes. And he was like, is that okay? Because I'm sitting there thinking that like we're gonna have like bullets flying. There weren't bullets flying, but I was thinking that the shell casings like could be scalding hot and like hit us, and that we needed clothes in case like we get burned by shells and everything. And he was like, you're just gonna be cold. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, I'll be fine. And then he like gave me a nod of approval, and he was like, yeah, okay. Well, it was snowing that morning. That's why he was saying it'd be cold. And I was like, I'll be fine. And he was like, yeah. And so like that immediately was pretty cool with me. Like I felt like if it was the Air Force guy, he would have been like, oh man, it's gonna be cold or something like that. Like this guy was just like, yeah, it's gonna be cold. And like whenever I said I'll be fine, he was like, yeah, you'll be fine. Like it was just that level of, it wasn't really true respect. I've felt true respect, but that was a little acknowledgement there between us, and I was like, yeah. And then the next thing was, I ended up running the IST mile and a half barefoot because my shoes got stuck in the mud somewhere, so I ran it barefoot. And in addition to that, I showed up at the wrong place. I wasn't supposed to be doing the IST mile and a half, but I ended up showing up anyway. And they didn't tell me that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. They just didn't tell me. And then I ran the mile and a half barefoot. They didn't say a word to me. Like, they're just like, okay, well, he's doing what he's doing. And I ran the mile and a half, got back. They didn't slap my shoulder, didn't give me a pat on the back or anything. They're just like, well, you did what you did. And to me, that was a good indication that I was where I wanted to be. These recruiters, like, just the mentality that I've had for a long time, these people have it. Like, they have the mentality that I want. And like I said, like, I don't know, like, this is my, it's a little bit messy, but this is my bed. Like, I sleep on a yoga mat on the floor, like, I have, from where I've been camping in the woods forever. Like, whenever I was in Colorado hiking those 300 miles, I didn't go and, like, have a bed. I just slept on the ground, and that's what I'm used to. And, like, I don't know, it's just like people complaining that, oh, I can't sleep at night, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you don't know what it's like to have a rough night's sleep. You don't know what it's like to have your eyes open all night. Like, I mean, that's going off on a rant, but anyway, it's just sometimes, like, if you've ever watched Heartbreak Ridge, if you haven't watched Heartbreak Ridge, I recommend you watch that right now. But anyway, so in Heartbreak Ridge, like, people act soft or something, and Clint Eastwood is just the most disgusted look on his face, like, what? But anyway, that's how I felt. And so to me, it felt like I was in good company. And let's see, was there anything else to add to that? No, oh yeah. I mean, like, to me, like, the recruiters felt real. Like, unlike I'm trying to explain the sentiment that I'm feeling, that I felt. Okay, so, oh, okay, I got it. Okay, so I was a bouncer for about a year or so. I was a bouncer at a bar, and this one night, I got drunk at a bar. I got drunk at the bar that I was bouncing at, but I was off duty. Well, anyway, the bouncers that were on duty, they had problems getting some guy out the door because he spiderwebbed himself to the door, and they couldn't get him out. So, like, I shoved into him, threw him out in the parking lot, and unfortunately, because I was drunk, I just randomly body slammed them out the door. One of my coworkers, he wasn't a coworker, he was a cop, but he was helping us get the guy out the door, got thrown out too. And anyway, to cut the story short, I thought he pulled a knife out on the cop. He didn't. He was just pulling up his pants. But anyway, I charged in front of the cop and, like, took a couple hits. But anyway, so I took a couple hits to the face. And I kind of let him do it because I was drunk and I was, like, a previous boxer at that time. And I seen that he squared up wrong. And I was just trying to prove to him that his punches were weak. He didn't know how to fight. So I let him punch me in the face a couple times. Well, anyway, I'm not going to tell what happened. Like, well, okay, well, I punched him in the collarbone. He fell to the ground. We slammed him up to the wall and tased him. It wasn't a real fight. But anyway, so I go to work at Kmart the next day because I had a bouncer job at night and Kmart in the morning. Okay, so I go to Kmart and, like, I have this black eyes, broken nose, black eyes, and I'm sitting there telling the story of what happened to my coworkers. And one of my coworkers looks at me and he's like, you got bopped in the face, you lost the fight. And I was like, what? Like, they're like, you bit off more than you could chew and you lost the fight. And I was like, no, like, what, in what world does simply getting punched in the face or getting a broken nose automatically mean you lost the fight? Like, no, that guy had no chance in hell of beating me up unless, like, he caught me off guard, and I was more drunk than I was, or incapacitated could that guy ever hope to beat the crap out of me. And just to have one of my coworkers be like, see black eyes and think that I lost a fight, it just let me know that there's people out there that, like, the general population is just out of touch with reality. Like, the most real people I've ever met were either veterans, bar goers, or my recruiters. Like, everyone else just feels like they're living in this world that does not exist. Like, that they don't know what the real world is actually like. And so, I don't know, it's just, sorry I went on a tangent on another story. But I hope you understand the sentiment that I'm putting out here, is that it's just the most, like, these recruiters felt like real people. Like, to me, the Air Force recruiter felt like the person who was saying that I lost the fight because I had black eyes. Like, it felt to me that the Air Force recruiter had not experienced the real world yet, and he's an E5 tech sergeant. It might be E6. I don't know what tech sergeant is, but it just felt like he was out of touch with reality as well. And, like, the Army guy, I think he would have been okay, but the Marine Corps, they had the mentality that I wanted. They were real down-to-earth people. And I could see that. Like, I just could. But anyway, this video is going on a little long. I'm getting a little too tired to keep my story straight, to keep a coherent thought, so I figure I'll end it here. The only reason why I started doing this video is because I can't sleep. I took a week off from working out this week, and, like, all of a sudden I have this tremendous amount of energy that I thought I spent today, but apparently I didn't burn off enough, because, like, I was out everywhere today. I went shopping, I went everywhere. But anyway, till next time, auf Wiedersehen.